My second most underrated movie is Cheech and Chong's next movie. I think it has a good plot. I think it's as good as the first film. I think that if it had come before the first film, people would be saying that it's better than Up in Smoke. I think it's just as good in cinematography and story, and might even be the superior film to Up in Smoke. I think it's faster paced and there's more funny moments in it. Like when Chong has the motorcycle that's inside and he's pulling on the throttle while the exhaust is killing his neighbor's flowers. There's lots of one-liners in it that I think are super funny and quotable, and I think of some of these lines to this day. Cheech and Chong are stealing, they've stolen their neighbor's car and then they're stealing gasoline, they're siphoning gasoline from someone else's car to fill up their neighbor's car before they return it. And then Chong lights a joint while they're in the car, and there's a gas explosion inside the car because they're covered in gasoline from siphoning the gasoline from another car. And then Cheech is all burnt up. He goes to his work, he's working somewhere in Hollywood, and he's all burnt up, and he has this lie of why he's late for work. He's like, oh yeah, no, there's a burning building, and I went in to save a baby, and I got burning baby all over me. Just that line. And when Chong pretends that the bag of soap that he has is Coke, and then Cheech is asking him for some, and he's like, no, you can't try. He's like, oh, well, let me just smell it. And he's like, okay, you can smell it. And he holds out the bag of Coke, and then Cheech sticks his face in it, and he's like, oh, this is soap, man. And then Chong gives Cheech his, the piss that he has for his parole officer, which he got from his pregnant sister. He's like, oh, here, man, here, have a drink to get the soap out of your mouth. And then he's like, oh, this piss, yeah. Lots of funny gags in it. Cheech is trying to avoid a call from his work, and he asks Chong to answer the phone for him, and he's like, okay. And then the person's like, is Cheech there? And he's like, sure, he's right here. So it totally defeats the purpose. The irony of that is really funny. And then Cheech is like, oh, what am I gonna tell my boss? Because the van they have stolen has been stolen. They steal a lot of cars in the movie. He stole a van from his work. And he's like, oh, what am I gonna tell my boss? And Chong says, why don't you tell him that you took his daughter out for a date? He'll be so worried about his daughter, he'll forget about the van. So lots of one-liners. Michael Winslow does a great bit part in it, a very small part, when Cheech is at the welfare office. Chong is waiting for Cheech. Cheech is having sex with his girlfriend. Chong is waiting for Cheech, and Michael Winslow is making his sound effects in the waiting room. It preceded Police Academy. Pee Wee Herman, who plays the desk clerk at the hotel which Cheech's cousin is staying at, that was his first performance as Pee Wee Herman. That was, I can't remember his name, Paul Rubens. So yeah, the desk clerk is Pee Wee Herman, and he played Pee Wee Herman for the first time in Cheech and Chong's next movie. Later in next movie, he does a stand-up set as Pee Wee Herman in his whole suit that he would wear. So I think both Michael Winslow doing his sound effects and Pee Wee Herman doing Pee Wee Herman, the fact that they're both in next movie, I think that's definitely noteworthy. I like the interleaved plot points that lead to irony. When Cheech and Chong go to this massage parlor slash bordello, one of the customers there is seen later in the movie because Cheech and Chong leave the bordello with one of the masseuses there, and then they end up bringing her to his house incidentally when they meet up with that guy's daughter. These intermingling of characters end up in potentially awkward or dangerous situations later in the movie. Cheech's dream in the movie leads to the ability for them to have their skit comedy in the movie. Cheech is dreaming of being an Aztec warrior. He stumbles upon a sacrificed woman on an altar, like an Aztec kind of altar. He's going to perform necrophilia on her. Do you remember that scene?
No, I don't remember that.
So he's dreaming, he's waiting for Donna, I think it is, to come visit him. So he's fallen asleep now and he's dreaming of violating this corpse. She starts to knock on the door, and he's hugging a teddy bear. In reality, he's hugging a teddy bear. He's like, in his dreams, he's having sex with this corpse. And he's like, get the hell out of here, because he thinks his neighbor is knocking on the door or something, but it's actually his girlfriend knocking on the door. Ironic, funny. Another way that Cheech and Chong weave their skit comedy into the next movie is Chong and Cheech's cousin Red visit a comedy club, and they actually tell a couple jokes. Really well paced. There's this episodic adventure feel to it. They're jumping from one hijinks to another, from visiting the welfare office, and little funny things happen. Cheech tries to get kids off of the seat so that Cheech and Chong can sit down, so he takes the football that they have and throws it. He's like, oh, here, go along, chucks it away so they can have some seats. The comedy club, the music store they go to, just everywhere they go, a little bit of mischief and trouble follows. The film ends in a chase scene, which is meh, kind of lackluster, but also kind of fun. The chase scene is a climax in itself. The cops crash, and then they're in Red's, Cheech's cousin's weed field, marijuana plant field, and a spaceship comes and sucks them up into it. So it's totally over the top, which I like, because in a movie like this, it's not meant to be believable. I think, like, for me, maybe the reason why this film, these other films are underrated is because a lot of people have such a high bar, and for films like this, I think, and for other reasons in the next film I mentioned, people have such a high bar, they're not taking the film, they're not valuing the film on what it is, they're comparing it to something else, and I think that happens a lot with sequels.